Okay, hello everybody. Today's date is August 20th, 2017, and my name is Leslie Williams. This is going to be a very controversial video, so I strongly suggest that everybody that's watching it, no matter what side you're on in reference to the current things that are going on in this country pertaining to the massive protests that are going on all over the country, please just wait and hear me out before you make any judgments pertaining to anything I state in this video. That means everybody, okay? Now, my fellow Americans, I want you to understand something about me. I'm not racist in any way, shape, or form. I never have been. My entire life, I have actually even stuck up for the black community. Look, I don't know what you just hear me out, okay? This country, the United States of America, is not what is portrayed in textbooks, in schools, okay? It's not as what is portrayed pertaining to what our politicians say they advocate for and denounce. If you had any idea concerning what I know, okay, which is why I make my videos, to inform, to expose what I know. And so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to fly right into the subject matter. I copied and pasted a tweet link and put it in the title of this Periscope video. And all you got to do is take out a piece of paper and a pen, okay, and write down the URL characters and write down the URL characters. At any time when this phone buzzes, it's because I'm getting notifications from YouTube, so I'll have to repeat what I'm stating when that occurs, so bear with me. Now, so write down the URL characters that of what is pasted in the title of this Periscope video, and then type them in at your URL address bar. And basically what it is, it's a tweet that holds a video pertaining to protesters clashing with the police in Boston, Massachusetts. Now, what you're going to see, all depending on what side you're on, you're going to have your own viewpoints pertaining to what you see. And that is the reason why I decided to make this video. Now, just bear with me. I'm going to make a statement here before I proceed pertaining to the subject matter. If this video stops at any point while I'm in the middle of talking, still research what I stated up to that point. Make sure you observe what's in the tweet link that I pasted in the title of this Periscope video, because my phone is hacked. Okay, I am a target. I'm an activist concerning the crimes that are known as gang stalking. And when you go to Google and you type in gang stalking and cell phone hacking, you will see that that is a method that the perpetrators, utilize against gang stalking victims. And if they see a target is posting things on the internet that they do not like, they can they can hack into your phone, shut it down. They can compromise any application while it's running, and so on. So, still research what I've stated up to that point. If this video stops at any point in the video, before I say thank you, have a nice day. Now, you can also feel free at any time to go into this Periscope account and watch all my videos or any of them. So I'm going to right now what I'm going to fly right into the subject matter of this video. What I incorporated within the title of this Periscope video, outside of the URL link that I pasted within it, is text that says the USA police are not as innocent, okay, as you may believe, because they're not. Now, I have nothing personally against police officers or the concept that police are needed in order to uphold our laws. Of course they are. Police are needed in every country, every town, city, state in the United States, and they're also needed obviously in other countries as well in order to try and attempt to keep law and order. But we also need to understand, though, that there are a lot of organized crime elements within our government at every level who will use the police as foot soldiers. Who will use the police as foot soldiers in order to keep the status quo. And if you're attempting to keep the status quo pertaining to the criminality that is perpetrated by the government, and the foot soldiers are used in order to keep this status quo ongoing and to protect it, then what we basically are dealing with are nothing but criminals. Okay, criminals who are using foot soldiers to keep the status quo going and to achieve criminal motivations. Now, let me give you an example about this, and then obviously I will proceed pertaining to the subject matter. Okay. Why is it that you can go to Google and type in gang stalking and or organized stalking and police? And when you see how many Google generated responses that come up, and then what comes up through the research from typing in these descriptions, I think you will automatically deduce that police are being used, okay, to not only assist in the gang stalking crimes that happen towards completely, 100% completely innocent human beings. Black, white, Mexican, Asian, Muslims, Christians, Catholics, atheists, and so on. Because anybody of any race, creed, color, or religion can be a gang stalking victim. Absolutely. Including police can be targeted as well. That right there should tell you automatically that anybody that can target the police and get away with it obviously has power positions in our communities. Is this not so? And you will discover truth pertaining to my statements if you research what I state. Now, for my fellow Americans, I personally am against Antifa because I know that Antifa is funded by Soros, and Soros ain't nothing but a international criminal, okay, who is basically using minorities who had been oppressed in our country, okay, and using their actual the things that have actually happened to them in this country. Blacks have always been subjected to discrimination, racism, okay. And when I say discrimination, I'm not just talking about general discrimination based on racism, but also the way that and you can disagree with all you want. Let me give you an example concerning this. Just hear me out. Now, my immediate statements that I'm about ready to make are not what is not what the entire video is about. But I'm going to include it just to educate you about something. Okay, back in the day when slavery first became illegal as a result of what came about as a result of the end of the Civil War. What a lot of the individuals did back in the South and even in parts of the North, what they did was they realized, okay, the blacks are now free, but we still don't want them congregating within our communities, okay, and committing crimes, raping women, and so on and so forth. So what they did was they went and passed a bunch of laws, okay, in order to arrest them for loitering. Because they already knew that black people that were freed as a result of being slaves did not have no home. And then they turned around and used them for forced labor as a result of being arrested for loitering. And what did they end up getting away with as a result of using them for forced labor? They ended up using them just like in the way they were used as they were slaves. So if you don't think that our system has never been corrupt, I strongly suggest you research this. Now, as far as blacks go, you need to also understand there were a lot of blacks in America that owned slaves back before the Civil War freed everybody. So it wasn't just all white people that were criminally insane that engaged in these behaviors. Not all people from down south are evil and wicked. Okay? Now, just hear me out. I'm completely and totally aware that there have been sections within our society all throughout history that are white, that have been evil and have been racist. Okay? And it's an unfortunate thing that has occurred in this country. It's almost unbelievable that it even occurred to begin with. Okay? So what Soros is doing is he's taken all these past heinous crimes and the fact that in many ways they are still occurring through discrimination and so on and so forth. And he's using, okay, the accurate, truthful conclusions that are in black people's minds concerning how they've been set back. And he's using them by using the truth that they know to get them excited, to get them to speak out. But I want you to understand something. This government still to this day does not care at all about anybody's civil rights. Nobody's. And yes, there is still racism agendas going on in this country, in the government, from behind the scenes, no matter what any politician ever gets up and says. concerning them condoning it, whether they actually condone it or not. Now, there's a lot of discrimination also going on against white people too. And if anybody, no matter what color you are, or no matter what faith or lack of that you are, if you hate white people, let me help you understand something as well. White people have also been victims of slavery and still are. I strongly suggest you go to Google and type in white slavery. It's still going on today. Absolutely. Okay? And white slavery also encompasses minorities. So, it is my opinion to help you try and understand. It is my goal to try and help you understand that when you see these Antifa groups being intentionally used by inflaming, certain truths concerning what has happened to minorities, a lot of these minorities are just sticking up for themselves, which I would be too if I was them. But they're being used in ways that are helping to assist in why Soros is actually using them. To excite riots, to excite protests. And why is that being done? Because the blacks know that police have always targeted them. Because they have. Absolutely. 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 So when a huge part of our white population is not aware of the things that are still going on towards blacks, because blacks are segregated. They're not aware that a police officer will ride down the street in a black community and see a black guy walking down the street and target him for the prison industrial complex. So once he's put in jail, federal and state and local funds can be applied for in his name, and then the police get kickbacks for it per prisoner. I bet you didn't know that, did you, white America? Of course not. And they're also warehousing black people because of the simple fact for population control. Because every time a black baby is born, whether they get on welfare or not, and white people are on welfare too, so I'm not stating that all blacks are on welfare. What I'm stating is that you don't know about a lot of things that are going on in the government that are being used by corporations. In other words, a lot of our prisons right now and detention centers are privately owned by corporations. They get federal and state funds for each client that is put in these detention centers. Now, if you got black people who are being discriminated against covertly pertaining to employment, and that black person cannot find a job because of these covert discrimination programs, which are being initiated and always have been, they know that black person is going to end up on welfare. Same concerning whites that don't have degrees, because the system does keep a catalog on how smart students are throughout their entire grades of school, from grade school to middle school to high school, college. They keep track of all these standardized test scores. In other words, they keep track of how smart you are, and then they just deduce if you're going to be able to contribute to society. So when they look at how whites and their scores from these tests, they're going to say, well, this person is not very smart. They got an 80 IQ. They're going to end up one day, once they become an adult, getting pregnant, and their kids and themselves are going to end up on welfare. That's going to suck off the system. So they're doing the same thing with blacks. And so what they're doing is they're saying, well, we better get a hold of this black guy before he has kids, and then him and his kids end up on welfare. They suck from the system, and therefore it's less money for the system. So what they do is they say, well, we'll target this person. We'll accuse them of committing a crime. We'll put them in jail so that jail can file for federal and state funds. Absolutely, absolutely. And so the organized crime that owns these jails can use these people as straw people. Hold on. Don't think this shit's not going on. And let me give you an example concerning this. But before I do, let me light my cigarette because I'm taking a break. And I always make videos when I take a break. So just hold on a minute. Let me give you an example about this. You can go to Google when you get done watching this video, and you can type in how a Pennsylvania judge in Pennsylvania, was sentenced to 28 years for pipelining first-time misdemeanor children to detention centers as a result of him giving these children who committed first-time offenses, he gave these children the full maximum sentence for each misdemeanor that this child would commit. And why did he do that? Because when you have a child who commits a misdemeanor crime or even a felony, the state operates on guidelines pertaining to sentencing. Like, say if you steal a loaf of bread from a store, usually the sentencing for that might be 30 to 90 days or community service. Okay? Well, say if you got a child that commits some kind of vandalism, and the property loss is in the tens of thousands, or 1,000, or whatever. They have guidelines pertaining to the severity of the offense. So what this judge would do is he would take first-time misdemeanor children that committed a misdemeanor act for the first time, and sentence them to the full maximum sentence, which meant jail time. Then the child would go to the jail, and the detention center would file for federal and state funds per inmate. When the funds came in, that detention center, pipelined a kickback of those funds back to the judge, and he got caught and got 28 years. So that right there should tell you this shit's going on. Okay? So the point I'm trying to make is this. Who do you think is assisting these organized crime elements within the system that is warehousing minorities and impoverished whites as well? The police. So when you see shit that's on the internet concerning how the police are being attacked by these black groups, maybe you better understand that that they have experiences that you know nothing about. Okay? The police are not as innocent as you think. See, another thing that my fellow Americans need to understand as well. Okay? The government is 100% completely involved in human trafficking and prostitution rings, and that encompasses white slavery as well. White women are some of the main targets of human trafficking because they are preferred females. Absolutely. Even ISIS says that they would prefer white women with blue eyes. I strongly suggest you research white slavery and gang stalking and white slavery in the government and human trafficking in the government. Like, for instance, gang stalking is directly connected to human trafficking and prostitution rings and much more. So why is it that you can go to Google and type in the police and gang stalking and get tens of thousands of responses to it if they're not involved in it? So when you see these protests of police being attacked by people, maybe it's because these people know a little bit more about the police than you do. Then you've got the media, who is controlled by 6 corporations in this country and all of their affiliates. The media is told what to cover and what not, and how to make people look concerning what's being covered. Now, I'm going to tell you something. The reason why I don't like Antifa is because I know that Soros is using these people who do have legitimate complaints. Absolutely. I don't believe in some of their political ideations. No, I don't. Okay, absolutely not. Because Soros is using this shit for conquer and divide. Absolutely. You don't. Let me just give you an example. Do you honestly don't think that some of the black population is not racist, whether they believe that their racist views come from crimes that have been committed against them because of white people? Of course, a huge aspect of our government is based on white people making choices. But what they're doing is using this. What they're doing is using this to separate whites from blacks, divide and conquer. Just like if you were to hold 5 pieces of sticks in your hands, and each one of those sticks represented a large group of people, Americans. It's harder to break those 5 groups, those 5 sticks with your hands than it is to break one stick, one person, or one group. Now, when shit hits the fan later on down the road that the government will perpetrate possibly through false flags, which are all over the internet that they're perpetrating, absolutely, absolutely. How do you think it's going to be better to control the population if the population is divided and divide? Because when you divide groups of people and set them against each other and then bring in a massive event about, okay, then you're going to have groups fighting each other while the police are acting like they're coming to the rescue, and they're acting like what they're suffering as a result of these riots. They have a right then to pass new laws, and these new laws will be used against you down the road. Do you understand how this shit's working? Okay, just like you got all these radicals who are engaged in terrorism in America and and in other countries. After the terrorism event occurs, the media will start saying, "Oh, geez, oh God, they got their radicalized ideas from the internet. We better start censoring the internet." And if shit ever hits the fan and the government starts violating your rights in a massive scale, how are you ever going to tell your fellow Americans that you're being abused? Because the government the internet will be censored. False flags. The point I'm trying to make is this, is that what these filthy maggots are doing, Soros is using people that have legitimate complaints to excite these protests. The protests are now going after the police. It's being advertised that these people are nothing but terrorist groups now who are attacking the police for no reason. Then they turn around and start saying that these protests can't occur because they're becoming too violent. Well, check this out as well. I made a video about 2 months ago stating that it's in one of my Periscope videos. HAARP and CERN is in the title. You can go into this Periscope account and you can review it. Okay? It's got the word HAARP and CERN in the title of it. I believe that's the correct video. And it literally goes, it shows me stating that there are specific technologies that exist that can excite the human neurological and biological systems in order to manipulate and influence their behaviors, including manipulating and influencing their behaviors into rage in the midst of protest. Now, I made that video about 2 months ago. It's in this Periscope account, and when you find it, you're going to see that it was published 2 months ago. Well, today's date is 8/20/2017. On 8/14/2017, on the Ground Zero Show with Clyde Lewis, you can go to his blog, click, and once you bring his blog up by typing his name and the name of his show at Google, Ground Zero Clyde Lewis, bring up his website. Once you bring it up, click on the feature that says Listen Now. A menu will fall down, then select work a list of his past shows. What you want to do is look for the show 8/14/2017. Psychotronics is mentioned right in the title of the label of what the show's about. John Hall is also a featured guest on the show, and the entire show was about how this technology is being used on individuals as they're in the midst of a protest in order to excite violent behavior. Do you understand? That was literally just covered on the Ground Zero Show on 8/14/2017, not even a week ago. The video I made exposing this was already in my Periscope account made 2 months ago. So I strongly suggest maybe that you start listening to what I state pertaining to what I know. The government is orchestrating this shit from behind the scenes. The hierarchy, the main of a bitch, and the low-level ones who are actually attending the protest are people with mostly legitimate complaints. I might not agree with every bit of their political views, but understand this and know this shit is being orchestrated so it can be played out, so the government can say these protesters are too violent, so laws can be passed in order to prevent future protests, so when shit hits the fan, nobody will be able to speak their voice. Okay? Now, as far as some of these Antifa protesters being violent... Hold on a minute. Being violent and throwing feces and urine balloons and all that other stuff, stop that shit, because that ain't helping you. That ain't helping you none, because it's just making you guys look like idiots and jerks. Now, as far as the violence goes, you better understand also as well, incorporated within these groups are anarchists who are intentionally put within these groups in order to create this violence, so the violence can then be looked upon and frowned in order to disassemble these groups, label them as terrorist groups, so they can never be used in the future. Do you understand? So let me tell you something to Black America. The government is never going to care about your civil rights, ever, ever. It never has and never will. Do you honestly think that a government that allowed slavery, that made sure that the slavery continued once slavery ended, that vehemently kept you from your civil rights in the 50s and 60s, and you're still being discriminated against today, do you honestly think that just because you're up and protesting that they're going to change anything? No, they're going to pacify you with a few sound bites in the media. They're going to make you think they're going to do things about it, but they're never going to, because they are racist. And I'm not talking about whites in general. Most whites in general are against racism. They can't stand it. They can't stand bigotry. The generation that's living today had nothing to do with slavery of yesterday. The average white American citizen has no influence whatsoever in politics. I'm a white woman. I can't even see my own mayor. Okay? The average person cannot be seen by their mayor, their councilmen, their councilwomen, okay, their congresspeople, their senators. They're experiencing massive discrimination as well, and that nobody in the government is listening to them as well. So if you think that the average white person that exists in this country is against black people, think again. We don't care. Most white people are against racism. We do not want any type of bullshit to be going on that's going on right now today. What's being orchestrated today is being orchestrated by the deep state. And you better research what I'm stating, because everything that's coming out of my mouth right now is true. Now, the police are nothing but controlled foot soldiers. Why is it that the police are told to stand down to allow some of these violent protests to occur, and then all of a sudden these Antifa groups start going after the police? That's being done in order to portray them as completely violent, even though some of them are. So then they can make it appear that these groups are attacking police for no reason. Fellow American citizens, what this is a psyop, meaning that these are psychological operations that are being intentionally brought about. Never, ever, 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 ever trust the police about any damn thing, no matter what anybody says concerning them, including the president. Because if you had any idea what I know concerning the police, they are nothing but organized crime foot soldiers, and they will never be nothing more. Okay? So I strongly suggest you research what I've stated in this video, slowly and meticulously pertaining to each statement. I made this video to inform, to expose the truth. Thank you for listening, and please research what I've stated. Thank you.